It's morning. The human turns on the tank light. The light shines through the doorway of the rock hut and catches Hermie's eye. "Oh my God, provider," he grumbles. "How do you stay up for all hours of the night and function on 4 hours of sleep? You keep me up all night playing on your machine of color and light." Hermie reluctantly begins to pull himself out of the shell so he may greet the abrupt morning. He looks around to see that his tank mates are still sleeping, just out of the way of the light. He does not wake them, for that would be rude. He crawls his way out of the rock to see the human is reaching into the tank. The human, who Hermie calls the provider, reaches for the food bowl. As the human picks up the dish, his stomach begins to growl. "Of course, provider. You would remove the food bowl as I reach the peak of my hunger." The provider takes the bowl out of the tank and closes the lid. Sigh. What am I going to do for food then? He thinks for a bit, with hunger making it difficult to hear himself think, the sounds of his stomach roaring ever so loudly. Then he had remembered something. Wait a minute. I remember dragging some food with me back into the rock. I'll go check my stash. Hermie shuffles back into the rock to find Mr. Pincher's gorging himself on the food stash like a ravenous beast. Savagery fills his eyes with every pinch, cut, rip, and tear. "Pinchers! No! No, Pinchers! What are you doing?" Mr. Pincher looks back at Hermie, food still hanging out of his mouth. In horror, he says, "Why, Mr. Pinchers? Why?" Mr. Pincher stares at Hermie for a few seconds. He then resumes his onslaught of Hermie's hidden rations. Within a brief moment, he finished his feasting, leaving only crumbs. "Okay, Hermie, don't panic," he said to himself, failing to do so. "There's got to be something to eat around here." Hermie begins frantically scouring the tank looking for anything to eat. The hunger grows. He begins to chew on everything in his wake. Shells, plastic plants, rope, anything. With every bite he asks himself, is this food? Then he notices the isopods. They can be found around the tank. They help keep the tank clean of feces and scraps. They are harmless and are starting to look tasty to him. They are just ripe for the taking, he thought to himself. But just as he grabbed one, the provider comes back and sets in a new dish of food. "Provider, you've returned with a bounty," he said with glee. "Fresh greens, fruits, nuts, and a shrimp tail, shell casing and all." The provider then takes a small cup of honey and places a small cup of honey in the tank as well. It's like medicine. Hermie immediately rushes over and begins stuffing his face and gets his fill before the smell of food draws out the entire tank population. As Hermie eats, the other crabs begin crawling out of the woodwork. No, literally. There's a small log in there. They start gathering around the bountiful feast that was given to them. Hermie's belly is now full, and he is now a happy Crabbie. Now that was food indeed.